Hey, fifth graders. All right, so our next lesson for math is going to be lesson 9.5. You should have done the mid-chapter checkpoint, which is found on page 557 and 558. So if you haven't done that, make sure that you do that. I will post the answer key to that in the answer key sheet. So lesson 9.5 is pretty straightforward. It also is the beginning of two lessons where we don't do any sort of graphing. This is just going to be purely looking at numbers and the patterns that they are making. So you guys have been doing number patterns for a really long time, probably even before you realized you were doing number patterns. And so this should be pretty straightforward. So let's take a look at stuff that we had done before. So here's a really super simple one. So you have 3, 6, 9, and 12, that sequence of numbers, okay? So if I asked you to find the rule for that, I'm sure most of you can figure it out almost instantly, right? Like obviously we're skip counting by 3. The numbers are going up, so we're adding 3 each time. Okay, so you would just say, add 3 would be your rule. And if you take a look at this next one, here we have slightly more complicated. This one is from, I believe that was chapter 6. Yes, chapter 6 would have done something like this, where you have 5.5, and then 4.5, 3, and then 1 3/4. Okay, so how would you figure out the rule for this? Well, you would take 5.5 minus 4 1/4, or you could do 4 1/4 minus 3, or 3 minus 1 3/4. Okay, and if you do that, you're going to find that you are the difference between these numbers is 1 and 1/4. Okay, so if you add 1 and 1/4 to 4 and 1/4, then you get 5.5. If you add 1 and 1/4 to 3, you get 4 and 1/4. So that's what works. Now, then we say, are we adding or subtracting? Well, since we are going down, the numbers are getting smaller, we're subtracting. Ugh, that's sloppy writing, but you get the idea. Okay, so that's how we used to do it. Now, for this lesson, we are going to be looking at things a little more like ordered pairs almost. So here's a problem. This is number 1 from page 561. It looks something like this. Okay, so you've got dimes and nickels, and it's basically saying, okay, for the number of coins that you have, here's the amount of money, here's the value of it in terms of cents. Okay, so if you have 1 nickel, it's 5 cents. If you have 1 dime, it's 10 cents. 2 nickels is 10 cents. 2 dimes is 20 cents, so on and so forth. Okay, really straightforward. You guys could, again, all kind of do this in your head. But notice that all of a sudden, we have a lot of rules that are available to us, right? So if we only had the dimes, so if we just went 10, 20, 30, 40, like, okay, we're counting by 10, so you just would say, all right, you just add 10 every time, okay? But now, since we have this chart, we basically have ordered pairs. And there's a lot of different rules that we could look at. For instance, you could say that for every coin you have, you multiply the number of coins you have by 5 to find the value of nickels, assuming that they're all nickels, of course. Same thing for dimes, only you'd multiply by 10. You could also say that whatever the value of the nickels is, multiply that by 2 to get the value of the dimes, or if whatever the value of the dimes is, divide that by 2 to get the value of the nickels. So lots of different rules here. In this case, they actually want you to talk about multiplying in relationship to this number and this number. So if you have 5 nickels, that's of course 25 cents. And if you multiply 25 by 2, that gives you 50. And of course, 5 dimes is 50 cents. So you're going to say multiply by 2. Okay? All right. So again, a pretty straightforward problem. That's a 2. Should be very easy for you guys, naturally. So let's take a look at maybe one that's just a little more complicated. Not much more complicated, but a little more complicated. And that is problem number 3. This is still on page 561. Okay, so this problem involves bags of marbles. And so it tells you each bag of marble has a certain number of marbles in it. And then they all weigh the same. So depending on how many bags you have a certain weight. And of course, if you look at this, and mine's a little smaller than yours. Yours goes to 4 bags, but it doesn't really matter. this is kind of giving you like everything is pretty equal, right? Now, these little dots here mean the pattern continues. So it means it keeps going. There's stuff in between, but we're going to skip to the one that we actually care about, which in this case is 12 bags of marbles. So the book tells you that 12 bags of marbles is 360 grams. And they want to know what is the total number of marbles that you have. So what value would go here? Well, the book is going to give you the like specific rule that they want you to look at, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But before that, notice that there's a lot of rules, again, that compare 3, 30, and 90. Okay, so we could say the weight of the, like the total weight of the bags of marbles or the total weight of the marbles divided by 3 tells you the number of marbles, right? Because 90 divided by 3 equals 30. You could also say that the number of bags of marbles times 10 gives you the number of marbles that you have, or the bags of marbles times 3 gives you, or times 30 gives you the weight of the marbles, and it works for all of them, right? 1 times 30 is 30, 2 times 30 is 60. Okay, so there's lots of different rules. Well, I say lots, there's like 3 or 4 rules that we can use. Now, the book actually has a specific rule that they want you to look at, which is this. So it says, basically they give you everything and then you just have to plug in the number. So it says, divide the weight of the bag by blank to find the number of marbles. So if we're going to divide the weight of the bag by some number to get to the number of marbles, well, we've already talked about it, right? What do you divide by? You divide by 3. So we've got 360 divided by 3 is going to equal what? Well, 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 6 twice, 3 goes into 0 0 times, so that's 120. And this is by 3. So that's what your number 3 should look like. Now, you can also check yourself by looking at the other rules that maybe are a little more obvious, right? We know 1 times 10 is going to tell you the number of marbles for your bags, because 2 times 10 is 20, 3 times 10 is 30. So here we have 12 times 10 is 120. So even though this is the rule that the book is asking for, you can check and make sure that that number is correct, and also that your rule is correct, just by looking at the other rules to check your work. So that's it for this lesson. Again, it's really straightforward. There's not even a whole lot of problems. So hopefully it will make sense. If it doesn't, of course, always feel free to send your questions in to me, and I will help you as best I can. Anyway, have a good day.